I think we are officially live. So I'm recording here and you can hear me and I can hear you, which is awesome. So for our audience, and I think I'm going to have to post it later over to Facebook because I don't think I got that done properly, but nonetheless. All right. So we usually push it live as we go here, but this will go out a couple of times for us. All right. So first of all, thank you for being here.
What an honor.
Yeah, I am so excited to have this conversation. What's fascinating, Alyce, when you originally told me that you were writing this book, I was like, this is brilliant, because I've always thought of like, what if a mom, what if a soon-to-be mom, or what if a mom of 20, 30 years had a little bit of a kind of a playbook, to move forward. I've always wondered, why hasn't there been one created? And especially, I love kind of the direction you took, and I definitely want to dive in deep, because believe it or not, I did. So I know it's a phenomenal book, but I got it yesterday and I got it in digital form, but I read it. So yeah, so I was able to do a deep dive, which means that I have all kinds of different questions for you and all kinds of different, kind of conversations that I want to have about it. I'm going to try one more time to kind of go live here. I'm going to see if I can do this.
Do it.
All right, let's just see here. All right, no worries. All right. So anyways, all right, let's back up for our audience. Obviously, they don't know you. So this is my dear friend, Alyce Dailey, and she is a mom, of course, and she has 4 wonderful daughters. And I met her husband, Seth, who's an awesome gentleman as well. I've had the luxury, I think I met all the kids at this point. Is that right?
I think, have you met our oldest? I think the oldest might be the outstanding one.
The last one, okay, maybe not the oldest, but definitely.
But in 2 weeks, we're going to be down, so we'll come see you.
Okay, perfect. So I get to meet them all. So without giving too much detail or telling everyone about it, because I want the book to kind of explain the story that came into this, but I'd love to know just why, for our listeners that are there today, for here tonight, you're going to be listening on a recording, what made you think of writing a book? That's a huge undertaking. What inspired that? It's not easy work. Oftentimes it takes months, if not years. So what inspired that? Give us a little backdrop on all of that.
Yeah, it's actually been a bucket list item to write a book, but when I wrote it on my bucket list, probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I didn't know what the book would be about, but it's more about, hey, it's like when Jim Rohn says, like, set a goal to become a millionaire, but not because of the money, because of what it would make of you to have to earn that money. I felt the same way about writing a book. So what kind of person would I have to become in order to be the kind of person that writes a book? So, it's always kind of been a bucket list thing. And about 4 or 5 years ago, as I was hitting, I knew a transition was coming. I started thinking, I think for all of us, like, our genius is just so close to us that we just don't see it. And I started thinking about, what's the question that people ask me all the time that maybe I'm not even thinking about. And the question that I get asked all the time is, how did you guys raise 4 daughters that they think differently? They're entrepreneurially minded, they're curious, they're kind. There's just something different about them. And I thought, well, why don't I start going down that path of curiosity and start exploring, like, what are the things that we did in our home that seem normal to me, but maybe aren't normal to everybody else?
That was one of the first things the first time I met the kids. Trying to think with the order here. I think I met them in Austin. And that was my first impression. What amazing little present. That was one of the biggest things I noticed first, just present, like, came out, met me, introduced themselves. But in that moment, very, very present. It almost threw me off a little bit. Like, I need to like level up a little bit here to these amazing little children. And the fact that they're all, maybe you feel different, but I feel like they're completely different as well. They are okay.
So different.
Yeah, which is quite fascinating. So let's talk about this concept and this idea of raising entrepreneurial children. So, and I want to give a little backdrop in the book as well, because I did get a chance to dive into it. It's kind of written in a direction for moms and written in directions as if you had a daughter. I think that's the general idea, but I will tell you, I'm an entrepreneur and I love reading it. I absolutely love reading it. And I think this, the application would be across the board.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. The ideas, the concepts, the information that you do. And I love how easy you made it to roll through. So talk to me a little bit about that. The entrepreneurial concept, that spirit, I think is what you talk to in the book. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by the entrepreneurial spirit.
So I came from it of the standpoint of, I believe that being a mom is the most entrepreneurial thing you could do, right? Because an entrepreneur is somebody who takes risk with initiative. What riskier thing than bringing a human into the world and raising them? So I think there's this mindset for moms, number one, to understand like, hey, you know, I'm not just a mom, just a housewife. There's a lot of I'm just a, and no, there is entrepreneurialism just built into the way that I think women are and how we're created. And when we raise this next generation, like how do we want to raise them, you know, to think and to be in the world, to be able, we want them to be able to create what they want to create and think for themselves. So teaching them how to take risk, how to take initiative, and whatever they do, to do it in such a way that they're choosing, not because life is happening to them, but whatever they want to do it because it's a choice. So this isn't about, you have to go start, you know, I want my daughter to go start the next Google. I want her to, you know, run some big thing, because as entrepreneurs that we are, we also want to hire people that think this way, because there are people that grow our companies that have that mindset, that don't necessarily own it, but they own their roles within whatever they do. So there's this idea of ownership of whatever it is they do wherever they are. So this isn't about trying to take them and make them into something they're not, but rather looking for what their gifts are and seeing how that entrepreneurial spirit can show up and however it is they're wired.
So we don't have any children yet. I'm fascinated how you've thought this through, because I've been in healthcare for 25 years. So I've been able to be a non-biased observer of children, of moms. And one of the things I learned, and I think we'll dive into this a little bit, especially when we get into the grace part of your book, is that moms collectively have been, if I took a patient group that was the most worn out, tired, using the phrases all the time, busy, and I have no time, that group right there collectively is they stand alone at the top of literally just worn out, drug out. And so I'm fascinated where along this way, because I'm sure you experienced some, according to your book, you did.
All of it, yeah.
How does it happen where someday you wake up and all of a sudden you're like, maybe I'm going to try a different path? Because it's not easy, right? So, because there are times I'm sure you were like, oh my God, I'm so busy. I'm driving 4 kids in 4 different directions. I'm making lunches, making dinners, trying to run your own business as an entrepreneur, doubling down a little bit of everything. Was there a pendulum that was swinging slowly, or Alyce, did you just wake up one day and be like, I've had it?
So our girls now are 19, 17, 13, and 10. And I remember progressively feeling like I was losing brain cells with every child that I had. Sleep deprivation is real. The exhaustion of, I remember I told a story about my 4th child, and like, hey, I was so excited. I remembered to make her doctor's appointment for her, like her 2-year appointment, only to be told that I missed her 12 and 18-month well visits. Like I was super proud of the 2-year and I missed all these other things. Like I thought I was winning and I wasn't. And I remember when the youngest went to kindergarten, and I started to feel like it was like I felt brain cells coming back. It was, or more like this fog was starting to lift that I had been so unaware of when I was in it. I thought I was high functioning in the years that I was raising them. And I think I probably was to the outside world. But I knew that I wasn't at my potential at that time. And so what it felt like was kind of like trudging through mud, like one foot in front of the other. And it was just this, you know what, this isn't forever. Just keep moving forward. Because what are your options? You're growing or you're dying. I didn't like the dying part. I wanted to grow. So it was, hey, wherever you can squeeze something in. So even when I was raising the girls, podcasts weren't even a big thing yet. I was still listening to like CDs or like tapes or, like whatever there was, or turning on, something on TV that felt like, okay, what can feed my mind? Or an audiobook. I feel like now things are so much more accessible and we can squeeze things in smaller chunks, but it was just wherever I can go, whatever I can do. What could putting one foot in front of the other look like today? I had to redefine what success and winning was in that season, because it wasn't some big like, okay, now I've arrived, I'm going to go shift my course, because it's like turning the Titanic. I mean, when you're in that season of life, and whatever you do, like I say this to everybody, we hear this like phrase of, the days are long, but the years are short with children.
Mhm.
Don't say that to a mother with toddlers, because we'll strangle you. Because those days when they're little feel like an eternity, and they feel without hope. They feel they're isolating. They're so draining.
Interesting. When I was reading the book and now hearing you speak about it, it seems as if you almost get to the point where you get to drop all the rules and you drop all the preconceived notions of how that you're supposed to raise a child, that it actually becomes very freeing energetically, and it becomes, and then the freeing for your children as well.
Yeah. And the paradigm that we took on was, we're not raising children, we're raising adults. And that shifted how we thought about how we treated them and how we spoke to them and how we showed up as parents. Because when we keep talking about we're raising children, we make excuses for them all the time.
Yeah.
And they're capable of so much more than we even know.
Yeah. So let's dive into the book a little bit, because I absolutely love the way you broke this down. So for the people that don't know, the name of the book, Magic Moms, correct?
The Magic Mom, 5 Principles to Unlock Your Natural Gifts to Raise Entrepreneurial Daughters.
All right. I think let's remove that there. And the book, you broke it down into a couple different categories, and I really love this. And the acronym, I think that's what we'll call it.
An acronym,
you broke it down, is called MAGIC.
Yeah.
So let's walk through that a little bit, and then I want to dive into some of those, specifically. I know we don't have too much time, but to give a feel for the book, because I absolutely loved it. So break down what MAGIC is.
Yeah. So MAGIC, I just wanted to come up with something simple so that the chapters are really small by design, because I know moms are reading it. We don't have a lot of time, and something just that we can remember, right? So MAGIC stands for model, affirm, grace, inquire, and coach. And when I looked at it, it was like everything that we've done as parents, everything I've done as a mom falls in one of those 5 categories.
Yeah. So let's talk about that first one, model. I think in your book, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. I think you said something along the ways of asking your question, what is the type of mom I want my daughter to grow up to be?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Am I the kind of mom?
Question? Well, what a brave question to ask, if you're willing to go there.
If you're willing to go there. So when you think of a book on parenting, a lot of times we think, okay, here's what you go do to like fix your kids. Here's what you do to go do to them. And I took a different spin of, okay, so all of these, every part of this, every part of MAGIC, we apply first to us as moms, and then the application to the kids, because that's always going to be secondary. So modeling, am I modeling the kind of adult that I want my child to be? Because there's a lot of still do as I say, not as I do.
That is probably my favorite. One of the options, that right there is, I think if that's all they took from the book, all they took from our podcast tonight, they just took that away and they took it to heart. And I think every one of us can ask, who do I want the world to see me as? Who do I want to be remembered as? If you have that mindset, especially as a mom, and you took that as kind of your like foundation, powerful. In health, I've watched, I've been able just to observe, and I've been able to observe the behaviors of moms and then see the replication in children. on so many levels, the fears, the concerns, the body postures, the so many different things, and children are just soaking it up and taking it in. So I love that you started the book that way, because that right away told me, we're going to look at not a how to manipulate your child into being in this normal mold. A little bit later, when we get into the education part, there's a part I absolutely love in there about the Tony Robbins event with, is it what, Carissa?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I think that she went off to an event there. So that breaking out of that mold and starting to ask that question, essentially, who do you need to be as a mom?
As health, like let's even talk about things like, so how many moms do you know that when their kids are done, like the moms will sit there and will eat the leftovers on the kids' plate, right? And it's like, well, it's because I'm tired. It's because whatever. Well, what if, like, let's just take for a second. Let me ask, like, did your mom do that in your house growing up? Was that modeled for you, that's what mom did? Mom eats the scraps on the plate. So are we choosing it, or was it something that was modeled for us that we're just doing because it's what we saw done, and we can change it? Well, as soon as you notice it, you can say, you know what? I know that this is a waste of food. I'm going to throw it away because it's not good for me. And I would rather let it waste outside of me than waste inside of me.
Yeah. Beautiful. That health analogy, I get the opportunity all the time with moms, especially if they happen to bring their children with them, or even if they don't, for me to ask them, is this what you're teaching your child right now? To say you don't have time to cook, you don't have time to prepare a meal, or you don't have time for exercise, because you're telling your daughter something, you're telling your son something. If that is your philosophy and your mentality, you tell them every day, I don't have time for this. And again, for our listeners, like, let this sink in. And I hear it all as well. Imagine if I was a practitioner and I wasn't healthy, what would I be telling my patients? So that conversation. So I love that you started the book with this. So inside of Magic, you talked a little bit about mindset. Yeah. And wow, this literally could be a 2-hour podcast, just some mindset, but why don't you bring that in there a little bit? Because I know we don't want to tell our children to think a certain way. We want to give them this freedom of choices. And I think I have a 2-part question for you. One, does it scare you to give them that much freedom? And then how do you do it? How do you help them have freedom with their choice and know that it might not exactly show up the way that you and Seth, your husband, want it to do?
Yep. So I think the key word there is detached, being detached from the outcome. When we're really attached to how I think it should be, I've got my blueprint of who I think they should be and how they should think. That's when we get so tight-fisted around the whole thing that we're trying to squeeze it. Anytime you try to squeeze something, we know what happens. It slips right out of our hand because we're trying to squeeze so hard. But if I hold them with an open hand, and I trust that I'm giving them solid foundational principles and truth and helping them navigate, whatever it is they're going through. It takes a lot of courage, but that's part of what I want to model. I want to model, like, I'll say to them, hey, this is really hard for me right now, because I want you to make X decision. That's what I want. But I model that for them. So it is this idea that, they are their own people. I'm going to be detached from the outcome. Yet this kind of ties into the last part of Magic, which is coach. These first 18 years, we get to be a coach for them in this game. And if we do our jobs well after they leave, we get to be like a consultant. But in this time, we can coach them along. But if we're making the decisions for them, how are we setting them up for when they aren't with us? We want them to make good decisions all the time.
When I hear you say that, it makes so much logical sense to me, and I absolutely love it, but it kind of flies in the face of the traditional to-dos, and you can do this, you can't do that, this is right, this is wrong. So I absolutely love it. And I think this is what, when you guys first told me about this book that you were writing, what really excited me. And then the moment I heard that you were getting close to launching, which I think is like in a week or something, I wanted to make sure we had this conversation, and I'm going to make sure that every one of my moms has an opportunity to either see the recording or get your book or both, because I think the freedom that you get as a parent compounds. And many of my parents, that is one of the things that I feel that they struggle with, is the casualness of having fun being a parent, because they always feel like they need to be in a kind of almost dictatorship.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The dictatorship part. Oh my gosh. If we could just let that go and realize that we can parent according to, nobody says that there's a way that it needs to be done. Even this, I mean, this book isn't about how to do it. It's giving you latitude with being able to be your own person and be yourself, like being able to share experiences. I think especially for moms raising children, like you're kind of parenting, especially with daughters, you're parenting the younger version of yourself when you see your daughter, right?
Yeah.
So when they're learning how to ride a bike, like you're going back in your own mind of like, when did I learn to ride a bike? Who taught me? What was that like? When they go through pain, like you experience it. So there's a whole like reparenting that's going on for yourself. And I think one of the greatest gifts with kids is being able to share those things with them. So, hey, this is how we're doing it in our house. You know what? When I was younger, this is how we did it. And this is how I felt. And here are the things that I really liked. And here are the things that I didn't like.
Yeah. So then let's migrate. And I know there's a lot in the book we can't cover, but I want to go to this next part. So that was M. We'll call that modeling. And then inside of model, there's several sets as part, and mindset was one of them. So the A stands for affirm.
Yes.
And I love this. This is something I practice. And this is what I mean, that this book is really good for anything. This is something I practice in my life, and it's affirmations. And in the book, I think you talk about having affirmations that you have, maybe you use different words, but the guts to say them out loud and that provoke a little bit of an emotion. So talk about how powerful that is. And also keep it real with us. Are your kids practicing affirmations?
They do. I remember my 19-year-old who's since moved out of the house, but I remember one day I walked into her room, and she was a junior or senior, and she had written on her mirror affirmations.
Wow.
And then and I've got another daughter that actually coaches kids, so she's practicing it, she's modeling it, and they also go to a school that follows it too, and that practices that. It's a common thing there. So I think as common as you make it is what it'll be, right? If it feels weird, it'll be weird. If you just make it normal, it'll be normal. I think the thing about affirmations is I mean, I grew up in the era where we watched Saturday Night Live, and it was just the whole, funny Gary Smalley, Stuart Smalley, whatever it was on, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Like those were affirmations, and everybody, kind of laughed around that. You don't need to believe the affirmation that you're saying. A lot of times you don't. And your subconscious can't take a joke. So the idea of just saying it out loud, even when you don't believe it. I tell a story in the book of going to a Tony Robbins event and had to climb this telephone pole. Two things I hate heights and I hate falling. So I'm climbing this telephone pole and I have to jump, and like, I'm terrified. And I end up jumping, I didn't die. And as I was processing the event after, of like, how did I finally decide to jump? And I decided to jump when I finally decided to stop listening to myself, and I started just talking to myself instead. We all have that little voice that's, playing that tape. We all know what it sounds like. It's our job to combat that tape for ourselves first, and then to teach our daughters how to do it, to teach our kids how to do it, because that's not a natural thing to know how to combat those voices. We don't teach that in school. So we got to do it at home. So even talk about, hey, what are those voices that you hear?
Yeah. Well, I love it. I love that if your kids are even thinking about that. I think back if I was 18 or 16 or 12 doing affirmations. And the truth is I was doing affirmations, but they were negative. You're right. Because they just came up, the insecurities would come up over and over again. But you mentioned a couple of things there I think are important. And this might even get sensitive for some, because in that chapter, I believe it's in that chapter that you talk about the power of community and really not only ours. So like the people that we hang out with. And so we're in a group together. Your husband and I are in a group together. We have we probably have had coaches that are cross our paths the same in different reasons and whatnot. And we as adults understand the power of the people you associate with. And, you know, you look around at the people you're communicating with and the people that you're hanging out with and sharing ideas and concepts with, really a reflection of your life, your health, wealth, and relationships.
And I'll say that I don't think adults know how to make friends, right? As we get older, it's really hard because we have to seek that out. I remember when a coach told me, Alyce, you got to get on a plane to find your friends. You're not going to find them where you are. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I was kind of offended at first, right? Like, I have lots of friends, and it's like, no. But to think differently, to be different, you've got to go seek them out. They're not just magically going to show up on your doorstep, and it will probably involve getting on a plane.
Yeah. So the sensitive part of this, it may or may not be sensitive. So then we look at the children and we're saying, okay, I want to, you as a mom and dad, I imagine you want them to surround themselves with good peeps, but you don't want to be in judgment and you want to give them the power to choose.
Yeah.
Walk me through that, because I think in your book, you talk about the Futuristic Five.
Yeah. Yeah. So we call them the Futuristic Five because it's show me your friends. And I know I can tell you what your future is going to be like, because who we hang around with, you hang around with people that eat well, you're going to be the sixth one to eat well. If you hang out with people that are financially independent, you'll be the sixth one to be independent. If you hang out with readers, you'll be a reader. The same works in reverse. You're hanging out with people that are doing not so great things, you're going to be the sixth one. So whoever those five that you're the closest to, you will become like. So yeah, you know, do our kids pick their friends? Yeah, they pick their friends, but you know what? I'm going to be really involved in kind of knowing who they are and knowing their family. And a lot of times, I hate to say it, but like, I know the kids just as well, if not more, than their own parents do, because their parents aren't involved in asking them questions and being involved in their lives. So they just like hanging out because we take an interest in them as we see them as adults. We don't treat them like children. We give them freedoms. We give them latitude when they're over here.
And then Alyce, do you go as far as, because I know you have some pretty, I was sitting at a table when you have conversations with your children. Do you have that conversation about the Futuristic Five, like what that really means, like the backdrop to that, and say, listen, I can look at your friends and know where you're headed this year?
Yeah.
Do you have that openly so they can then take that and then do with it as they choose, I guess, right?
Yeah, we're very Socratic in our home. So that gets to the I part, the inquiry of just asking questions, of helping them self-discover, because they know they don't need me to tell them if a friend is leading them down the wrong path, but I can ask questions to help bring that out and get them to verbalize it. So it might be, hey, tell me about your friend so-and-so. What kinds of things are they into? What do they do for fun? What do you guys like to do together? And they will disclose everything. They don't need us to tell them. They need us to ask questions and to be curious.
Yeah. So if a parent has maybe not done such a great job up to this point, you know, listening to us talk right now and be like, oh man, I made a mess. Is there hope for them?
Absolutely. There's always hope. There is always hope. I tell a story in the book about Gary Keller, how he didn't like who his kids were, his son was hanging around. And so he's like, well, they're going to be friends. So how do I motivate them? He's like, well, they're motivated by money. So he paid them all $20 to read Think and Grow Rich. Right. So they had to read Think and Grow Rich, and they had to write, you know, I don't know, so many words about the book just to prove that they actually read it and they got something from it. And he continued to do that. So we'll invest money in lots of kinds of things. Like as parents, like you can drop a whole lot of money going to Disney World. You can drop a whole lot of money on Oculus games, on all kinds of things. What if you dropped $20 to their 5 friends to all read a book?
That certainly would make you unique in the parenting style. And I love it. I absolutely, because you're right. Well, you easily drop $20 and go get them some ice cream and whatever, right? But so the money's not the issue. But imagine if you paid them to become wiser, more educated, and just one seed worked. One seed got planted.
Just one.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to turn it.
No, love it.
You just have to find what the motivation is.
Yeah. So then that brings up accountability. What's the seesaw here? Is it well, you didn't do this and now you're old school grounded? So what's the accountability look like in the realm of when you're trying to really promote choice, and not wrong or right, but just really observing outcomes.
Yeah.
How does the accountability part work?
So natural consequences are the best teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So part of their schooling, they don't have homework at the type of school they go to, and they can choose to get ahead. They can choose to be behind. There is no judgment around it, but there are natural consequences. Well, if you don't do your work, you don't move up in your level. You don't get your freedom. You don't get badges. They've built in accountability. So if my daughter decides to just, play on her iPad tonight and, talk to her friends and she doesn't get her work done, I just ask her, look, how did it feel to make that choice? What did it cost you to make that choice?
So that dialogue is always happening. That questioning, always
questioning.
And now that I'm listening to you, I think that sounds like that's an integral part of the success of this philosophy. Interesting. Yeah. So, all right. So then let's talk about the idea of playing it safe. Fan, not a fan?
I just don't think it's real. I think we've all got one life. Safety is kind of this I could be in a car accident. I could choke on a piece of steak. We all have our different tolerance levels. I think Steph and I might have a higher tolerance level than most, but we also we do trust our kids quite a bit. And I think about the dumb things we did, right? Growing up, that we didn't even have cell phones, and we can track them wherever they are now, and all kinds of things. So when it comes to safety, I don't want them to be scared of the world.
Yeah.
I want them our mindset is we want them to believe, we want them to be able to see the good in it, because we'll find whatever we're looking for. If we want to be afraid, we'll see the fear.
Yeah. It's interesting that when you talk about that fear and there's really no playing it safe. I agree. And the way my mother rose, my brother and I, was always through experience. Yeah. Especially when it came to our physical body. So if I remember very specifically when I was young, I got this Batman cape, right? Love the superheroes. And of course, when you're, 7, 8, 9 years old, you think you got a cape, you can fly. So I told my mom that I'm putting on the cape and I was going to fly off this wall. And she said, I don't think you should do that, but you'll learn why I said it. And that was always what she would say. She said, you're going to learn one way or another. So sure enough, I put on my cape, I went running, I jumped off this brick wall with this rock wall and about 6 feet down, and I crashed, burned, cut everything up, cried for a little while, but then kind of like had to suck it up and go back inside. And my mom saw the blood in my body and everything. So what happened? I said, probably shouldn't have jumped off the wall, So we had no fear of those things. And I think it really paid forth moving into our lives. So my brother and I were able to play sports and stuff like that without fear, just knowing that there was always a consequence, or there's always a lesson to be learned in it. And I think those values are so important, because otherwise we get in these boxes. And I know, especially in healthcare, we cannot be afraid of living. Like, we can't be afraid of the boogly woogly disease because it's out there. It's everywhere. Yeah. So I love that part of the book. All right. I want to jump forward even farther. So into the sex. So it's M, it was for model, A was for affirm, and then G for grace. I started off by talking about how, hands down, my mom's patients that I take care of, especially when they're on their second, third, and fourth. The first one is always interesting. They're excited, they're a little scared, a little excited. They're going to it real healthy. They haven't been sleep deprived for 5 years. They haven't been running, burning at both ends. The second one is usually very humbling. Yeah. The third one, then they're zombied. I don't know how you go to 4, and I see it frequently, but usually by the third one, they're just walking zombies. Yeah. And then we see real things. And so for the moms that are listening, we see real things that need to be attended to. So probably the biggest thing is adrenal fatigue. And it's a real thing where literally you use so many stress hormones. You're sleeping with one eye open. Yes. Like you said, you're eating last. You could be a family of 5, you eat 5th. You eat the scraps, you eat If you eat, correct. If you eat, and you might eat literally what's left over for lunch for the kids. Real stuff. And sleep, no human works good without sleep. And carrying a child, making a child, and then birthing a child, and then tending it and feeding it. Massive. So talk to me what you meant about grace.
So it's like, we go take care of our car, right? Like, the oil change light goes on. I'm going to go get the oil change because I don't want the engine to burn out. there are a lot of things that I think as women, we see as luxury items when actually it's the maintenance.
Yeah.
Just to keep the engine going, I need to go do these things, but we don't treat them as such.
Yeah.
Right? The drinking water, the sleep, I'm going to go to the chiropractor. I'm going to take some vitamins. I'm going to eat, like, or even going and getting a massage, right? Like, oh my gosh, that's a luxury item. I'm going to go put that in maintenance, because just to function at some level, we need that.
Yeah. Well, that message right there, I'm so glad you touched on that, because this isn't a how-to book. To me, this is like a self-awareness and become as close to superhuman. That's a conversation I always love having. Like, how do you move yourself closer to being superhuman? And so all my podcasts are kind of around that conversation. When I'm reading this book, I'm thinking, oh, this is moving a human toward being superhuman. And grace is such an important time, that self-care. And again, for our listeners, if you're a mom out there, no matter what phase you're in, I think this almost could have started it. You know, the grace part said, when you become willing to give back to yourself a little bit and not feel guilty for it, and recognize that really, when you give back to yourself, everybody benefits. And I think you talk a little bit about air mask first. Yeah.
Yeah. The oxygen mask, right? On a plane, like, such an overused analogy, yet it's overused because it's so stinking true, because they know that the flight attendants full well know that if something happens, like, you're still going to put the mask on the kid first, tie their shoes, give them a snack, make sure they've got a buddy before you ever get your mask on. But then this goes to the modeling. What are we modeling for them when they become adults? We're going to repeat the cycle all over again. I remember when I was on the plane for the first time and I heard it, I understood it. I'm like, what do you mean, Mom? You're not going to put my mask on first? Like, I remember as a child thinking that, because Mom always did everything for me first. But if Mom had said, nope, taking care of me first, because then I'll take care of you better, different model.
Yeah. So if I'm playing devil's advocate, what if, inevitably someone's going to say, well, that sounds selfish.
I'm no good to you. I'm no good to my kids if I'm dead.
Yeah. Amen. I agree. So in the health world, I always, the best I can, if I find a mom who is taking time to go take a yoga class or an exercise class 1, 3, 4 times a week, I high five them and edify them as much as I can. And it might not even be exercise. It might be just getting their hair done, getting their nails done, literally purely indulging in just loving back on themselves. And when I see the grace part, that's what I think. Loving thyself enough so you can go be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Even if it means like sitting in your driveway. I know women, we all do this. Go sit in the driveway for 20 minutes before you walk into the house. Just sit there in quiet, in silence. We all do it because it's like the only sacred time that we have. Right? So whatever grace looks like for you, it might be going and getting a cup of coffee by yourself. Turn off your phone. It's okay. Like, nothing's going to happen in that 15, 20 minutes. I mean, the devices are one of the worst things that ever happened to us because we feel like we need it all the time. It's made that alert, like needing to be alert all the time.
And again, that's where I think this book is so good for literally everyone. When I was reading that section, I was like, man, the grace phase, the grace part of it, many of us, especially if you're driven, and especially I think if you have this entrepreneurial spirit, often you almost feel guilty. If you do, just go have that cup of coffee and you're not writing an extra chapter in your book, or you're not responding to 10 emails. All right. So let's keep trucking forward here, because I want to talk about that, the simple phrase that everybody uses, and being busy all the time. Busy. I'm so busy. I can't do this. I'm driving all the time. So a quick input on that, because that is, to me, that's a language that is so commonly used and accepted, but it's a plague. It is the boogly disease. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a plague that is masked in a way that we get rewarded for it. So, I mean, I'm in the coming from the real estate industry, the busier I was, the more awards I got, the more times I got asked to speak on stages, the more accolades I got. Oh my gosh, I took 10 listings. Oh my gosh, how can I be like you? Alyce, will you coach me? So you get rewarded for being busy. So what do you want to go do more of? You just want to be busier because I'm getting this pat on the back. Yet if I walked into my real estate office carrying 2 handles of Tito's and was like, hey, everybody, I'm here. And I'm like, chugging away. I hope you would get me help
Mhm.
if I was walking around with liquor like that. But the busy is no different than the liquor, but
Mm.
we reward the busy. So busy
Yeah.
was a way that I actually behaved, so I didn't have to feel.
Mm.
It was a coping mechanism to stay busy, because internally I knew that if I stopped, I don't know that I would have liked who I would have seen.
Mm. Mhm. I think that's real. I think that's very real. So for you, I know that you also are coaching now,
Mhm.
and I know you also still own a business, a real estate business.
Yeah.
So how have you transitioned from making it busy? Because you could use those words anytime you want. Any one of us could. Or if you want to call it busy, how has it changed for you? Are you doing more things by choice at this point, or okay? So if
Yeah.
you would, because I think that's for a lot of us, that is, well, I got all this stuff going on. How do
Yeah.
I not be so busy?
First, let's go back to the mindset. What's the mindset we want to have? That life's happening to me, or that I get to choose?
Yeah.
Is it happening for me and I'm making choices? Because at any time we can choose differently.
Mhm.
And first of all, just to acknowledge, I'm choosing not to do anything different. I'm choosing this busy. Okay, well, if I'm choosing the busy, I can also choose to change it.
That concept right there, I think gets lost in it all. So I had to come to the realization that I love being in thrive mode. I love getting after it. It works for me. It works for
Yeah.
me. What I've gotten better at. So I've always thought about, and this is for everyone listening, moms and the dads, and especially moms who think they're too busy, but they love a lot of the things that they're doing. Because I love the way you just put that. You just chose to stay in that mode. You're just choosing to see it differently and giving myself grace. And I think when people get back to giving the grace, it doesn't feel like a beatdown anymore.
Mm-mm.
It almost like, what else you got? Because I know that you are expanding your coaching programs, and when I talk to Seth, it sounds like you guys have a lot of like fun things that I know you guys put a lot of thought into, and affirmations and consideration about lifestyle. All right, so we're running a little tight here, so I want to keep going here. So inquire. So the I in magic, inquire. In your book, you talk a lot about how there's a power and probably even an art to asking questions.
There is. There
Yeah.
is. We don't ask enough questions. We do so much talking, and
Mm.
we don't need to. Questions do the heavy lifting if we'll allow them to. And well thought out questions actually open up possibility. It changes, we can change the future by the questions that we ask, if we ask good questions. And that's not a skill that we learn in school. There's a whole study of appreciative inquiry on how you ask good questions. That's why we love coaching, right? Like, good coaches, they don't come to you with answers. They just are holding up a mirror and they're asking you questions that
Mhm.
you already have all the answers to. We're just coaches, just bring it out of you by asking questions. You're like, dude, you're my coach, but you didn't say anything. No, but they knew what question to ask you
Mhm.
to pull
Okay,
it out.
so I love that, and there really is a power in asking questions. In healthcare, doctors, believe it or not, we're supposed to be awesome at asking questions. That's the whole concept, the whole premise behind finding out what we call a diagnosis. There's a differential diagnosis. You ask question after question after question, so you've unturned everything,
Yeah.
and then you can come up with specifically what your desires are, or an outcome. All right, so let's shoot. So the inquiry of asking questions also then inherently breeds education. So this is where it gets a little different, right? Because you might then start to ask the question: is going to school 5 days a week for 6-7 hours a day in a classic setting, is that going to make me the best superhuman I can be?
Yeah. I mean, so Seth and I both went to traditional school through 12th grade. We both went to college, have multiple undergrad degrees. We both have graduate degrees.
Mhm.
Never thought we would do something out of the box. I do think we started doing something out of the box, right before COVID happened. I think COVID exposed a lot about education as to where there might be holes in the system in different places of how do we want to educate them? And we always said we would do traditional education as long as it worked for our family, because we wanted experiences and we wanted to travel. There was a
Mhm.
moment that I talk about in the book where it all shifted and the schools were like, they're missing too much school. And we're like, okay, we're out. This doesn't work. We don't know what's going to work, but this isn't it. And we found, you know what, there are so many different ways for education to happen, and it doesn't need to look a certain way, and it looks different for lots of families.
It really does. And so I want you to share the story about, I think, again, Carissa, is that right?
Carissa,
Carissa, I remember in one of our first conversations, I was like, wait a minute, your 10-year-old went to Tony Robbins, and then you had to have a conversation with the school because she missed time from school, which you guys found as valuable. So there's two parts of this. One, I guess sometimes in following this mindset or this philosophy in raising, being the mom or the dad who can raise an entrepreneurial spirited child, sometimes you're going to have to go against some of the rules. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we have always followed the Mark Twain quote, which Seth's mom passed on to us, which was never let your schooling interfere with your education. So we always took that to heart. Okay, don't let school interfere with the actual education. Like keep your mind, keep focused on what the goal is. The goal is education. The goal isn't the piece of paper. The goal isn't perfect attendance. I always felt sorry for the perfect attendance kids, right? Because it was like your parents never took you out to do anything fun. Like that's really terrible. So it was like, where else can you get an education? So school actually told us like, yeah, Carissa's missed too much school. And I said to Carissa, I'm like, are your grades all okay? She's like, yeah, my grades are great. And I said, what were they teaching that week that you were walking on fire at Tony Robbins? Well, I can't imagine that it was anything like better than that. So yeah, so all of our kids have gone and walked on fire with Tony Robbins, and they all did that ages 12 and 13. And we've got one kid that's done it, went back twice. And there's a crazy story about how she funded her own trip at 14 to go to Miami and do that trip a second time because she loved it so much. So our fourth daughter, she's 10, she's waiting for her turn so she can get her picture up in our house with everybody else that has walked on fire.
Oh my goodness. So have your kids started to, the ones that are in their teenage years now, have they started to take this entrepreneurial spirit and look in the business world?
Yeah, so they go to a school where they actually have a children's business fair. So they've had to start businesses every year as being a part of school. And it could be anything, right? Like anything from like making something, like they've done cake pops and, you know, baked things, to just buying bottles of water at Costco and reselling them. I mean, there's lots of ways to do business, right? And you learn something every time you do it. Laura, our 17-year-old, she's been coaching other kids. So like in their tween years, she coaches kids. She just got off a coaching call tonight that I was listening to. She just actually became a certified trainer for neurolinguistic programming this summer. She went and did 3 weeks of training to do that. And Carissa, she sold Cutco. So she did that for a while to see, you know, what she wanted to do. She's more actually ministry minded. She wants to go work in the four walls of a church, but she's also smart enough to know that that's not going to pay the bills. So she's looking at rental property in Tulsa, and she's like, okay, mom and dad, like, do you guys want rental property? Can I manage it? Can I help earn equity? Like she's thinking like, okay, how can I fund the life that I want to have, which is serving people that I know doesn't pay anything, but I know that I can make my income somewhere else. So this isn't all about just starting big businesses. This is about starting whatever you want that's going to fund the kind of life that you want to live.
So you're saying that you and Seth don't just fund everything for your kids all the time?
We definitely don't do that. They all have their debit cards.
Yeah.
And, you know, can check on what they're earning and what they go spend. And there are times that they go buy things that I'm like, dude, you really want to spend it on that? It's kind of, but then I just ask questions. It's all about getting into curiosity and getting out of judgment, learning how they think. Hey, what about that's important to you? And when you get curious about it and don't judge it, then they'll come back to you and say, you know what, Mom, I really wish I didn't spend it on that, but now I know and I learned. But they won't tell you those things if you're judgmental from the outset.
That's I think that's a great part of it. You know, and I love hearing you say that, because I think it takes a lot of discipline for a parent. I'm trying to think, if I had children, I would probably want to, I don't know that I would, but I would want to spoil them. And I know you and Seth have the means to, so there must be times you have to like kind of check with each other and say, it's a better thing if we don't. Is that real? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if you live, you know, in an affluent area where other kids are doing all of these things and are just getting things handed to them. Yeah, it doesn't feel fair. And there has to be lines. Otherwise, again, what are we modeling for them when they go out into the world?
Yeah. All right. So now let's go to the last chapter of the book. And there's obviously a ton that we're skipping over that we can't get to tonight yet. But last part, and I think it could be as important as anything. And I know, especially for my personal life. And that was, so in the magic part, the last part was coaching. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's coach.
Yeah. I love, Alyce, the way that you broke this down, and you talked a little bit about what a mentor is, what a consultant is, and what a coach is.
Yeah.
Could you give us a quick difference there?
Totally. So when kids are, from the time they're born until they're 18, we get to have this role as coach. And coaches, we're vested in the game. We're vested in the player winning the game, as opposed to a consultant who, if you worked at a company where a consultant comes in, hey, here are your options. Good luck. And they're out. Whether they get paid no matter what, they're gone. A mentor is going to share their life experience and say, here's my experience. Hope that helps. And they're on their way. So they're all valuable in different seasons of life. But as a parent, up until the time they leave our house, we have the opportunity to be a coach to them and to help guide them and to show them that we're vested in how things end up for them and them winning the game. Once they leave our house, though, we lose that title. We're not coach anymore because they're now driving their ship completely. Like they're making the decisions. And if we've done those first 18 years right, we'll hopefully get to be consultant. They'll hopefully call you up and say, hey, mom, here's what's going on. What do you think? But you earn that right.
Yeah. I think I think that is an absolutely beautiful way of looking at it. And I think back, my father's no longer with us. And I think when I was younger, he was a coach, and that's exactly what he did. He was very encouraging, was constantly teaching and educating and giving me experiences. I know, you bring your kids, they travel, they do things, experience things outside of the box. And then you're going to get that opportunity. I promise you that your children will look at those moments, be like, man, mom taught me so much. What would she do in this moment?
Yeah. Think about the best coaches, even from a sports perspective, right? Like look at like a Bill Belichick and a Tom Brady. Like there are times that that the coach was calling the play, but there were times where it's like, Tom, like you call the play. I trust you.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we get to do as a coach player relationship.
So how about let's just talk about the women for a second, just in general, the moms. How important do you think it is? Because as an entrepreneur, as a business guy, right, it's almost common that as an entrepreneur, I have a coach, right? And it's expected I go high risk, high play, etc. How about for the woman? Should she have a coach?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I don't know who of us can get through whatever we're going through without some outside perspective of a coach. Again, a coach, know the difference, know who you're hiring. Are you hiring a coach? Are you hiring a consultant? Are you hiring a mentor? Because they will all play different roles. A good coach is going to hold up a mirror, ask you questions to draw out what's already there. When you're feeling stuck, when you don't know where to go in an area, when you're wanting to grow, a consultant will come in and there are times where you need a consultant. It's like, dude, I'm stuck. Just tell me what to do. Give me a couple of options, right? There are times for that too. But as moms, I don't think we look at what we do as something that needs a coach. It's not historically been like, well, I need a coach. Well, I believe that we do. I needed one.
Yeah. Still need one, right?
Still need one. I will never be without one. And I think that the bigger you want your life to be, the more coaches you will actually have in all different areas of life. You'll get one for the finances. You'll get one for spiritual. You get one for your health. You'll get them in all different areas because they all specialize.
Yeah. When I think of a coach, I often think about the idea of I have a crystal clear idea of where I want to go. And reality is a coach can get me there faster.
Yes. It's a shortcut.
It is a shortcut. And it's in healthcare, we play both hats. We have the consultant, you come in, there's XYZ problems, and we give XYZ instructions. The coach is the one that helps you learn how to never get there again and to get farther than you thought you could be. And that right there. So early in my career, and I think this changes for a lot of people in their professions, they might start off as just a consultant and we're just kind of fixing stuff, right? And then you learn that the power and your ability to have impact is when you start coaching.
Mhm.
And when you're in that mode, the impact that you can have on people, and then ultimately, and I love hearing that your daughter is already having, mentoring calls or coaching calls, that you pass that on.
You
And
do.
you don't even know you're doing it, but when you are coaching, you're teaching someone else how to coach.
And what a model you set up for your kids when you say, you know what, I don't have all the answers. I have a coach for this. And your
Mhm.
kids are like, Mom, you need a coach? Oh, yeah, I need a coach. So what are they going to grow up and do? Same thing.
Yeah. And also, right. So there might be a spiritual coach,
Mhm.
might be different than your coach that you use for your finances or for your physical health or well-being or your
Totally.
business, or whatever it may be. All right. So let's talk about if people, so there's the books drop in next week. Is that right?
September 27th, Tuesday the 27th.
Wow. And then if
Find it on Amazon.
someone wants to buy Magic Mom, where do they find that?
Amazon. Go to Amazon, The
Amazon.
Magic Mom, Alyce Dailey. Yep.
Beautiful. And then you have a website, correct?
Website, alycedailey.com, commonly misspelled. So it's Alyce, ALYCE, DAILEY.com.
And then tell us a little bit. So I know you do some coaching. Could you got a minute left here too? Tell me a little bit about that, and who's something or somebody that they might benefit from coaching.
Yeah. So coaching for moms that are in this season of maybe I just don't know what's next. Maybe I feel like it's too late, or I don't really love the life that I'm living right now. Feeling stuck. Um, I love bringing these moms together and doing things in community as well. So we do things, one-on-one, but then also that community factor is really big, just to know that you're not alone and it's
Mm.
not too late. And a lot of moms in these 40 something, kind of like when you're kind of the kids are maybe starting school and you're looking around like, okay, now what? You've got the rest of your life, and your second life begins the moment you realize you only have one.
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients are right in that sweet spot there of like, okay, this is it. What do I do?
I am so excited that you're doing that. I think about so many women I've met over the years as clients and as patients and now as friends, that transition for a lot of them, they don't know how to get to that space, and unfortunately sometimes they never do.
Yeah.
And in what I see from my perspective is that when you're not at least involved to some degree moving toward your purpose, even if you can't define it perfectly, if you're not at
Mhm.
least moving in that direction, that thing that feels good, your body starts to break down.
It does.
Your mind, your body, and that's when dis-ease or disharmony enters our lives. And so I absolutely love that you are now going to be a resource for women to say, I don't, like, literally, I could see them showing up in your door and be like, I don't know. I have no idea why I'm here,
Beautiful.
what I'm doing. I have 14 kids at home and I want to move forward in the second half of my life.
So this
Or whatever.
overwhelm and this tired, all of this happens not because we're doing too much, but too little of the things that actually light us up and bring us joy. We've just forgotten what those things are. They're so deeply buried. So it's about going back to those things and bringing more of that into our lives. But when you're overwhelmed, it's hard to think about doing more. So that's why you need a coach to kind of come in and help you balance all that out.
Love it. And then I think in the book, you also mentioned a part about the idea of reading this book and doing it with a friend.
Yeah.
That, to me, that's beautiful, because that support and that camaraderie, that community is literally like it's just a brilliant idea. It just makes a lot of sense. So you don't, because you're going to have different strengths, and your friends and they'll have different strengths. I think that's a beautiful message there. All right. So I would like to ask a question at the end. So it's kind of put you on the spot here, this final
Sure.
question. So one question for our listeners. So the name of our show is Health Made Simple Show. And of course, we're just trying to simplify things the best that we can. And, just kind of package up and say, yes, just put your best foot forward. If you need to raise your hand, et cetera. So my question for you and for our listeners will be, if there's one thing you can, and I know that's a hard one, but if there's one thing you could leave them with tonight that would help them become closer to being the best version of themselves or to be superhuman, what would that one thing be?
It's adopting the mindset that it is never too late to live a life that you love.
I absolutely love that. Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So yes, and I agree 100%. I'm 52 years old, and I think you and Seth get this 100%, especially when I was chatting with Seth last time. I think that there's such momentum now with education and tools and resources and community and coaches that, man, it's just beginning. So I love that you just said that, because no matter where you are, you're never too late to literally start to live the life on purpose that you've always wanted, and to really raise the bar, even if you have no idea what it looks like. So again, I'll just kind of roll through here. It's Alyce Dailey. It's ALYCE Dailey.com. They can find you there. They can also find your book on Amazon starting next week. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait. I know I have my digital version, but I want a hard copy. And then, of course, there's, anyone who knows a mom, share this show out. I think this is the thing, one of the things that I'm really passionate about. I have no children. In all these years, this is one of the things, the moment you told me that you were writing a book to help literally raise entrepreneurial children, I was like, this is brilliant. The mindset of the entrepreneur, being healthy is an entrepreneurial spirit.
It is.
It is 100%. You have taken risk, no goodies. The rewards come with that. So thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for being you. Love you. You're awesome. Tell your husband and all your kiddos, say hi. And I guess I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Can't wait.
All right, awesome. All right, dear. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.